It's a phrase we hear so often, it barely registers anymore. Time is money. 4 words that have shaped how entire generations think about work, success, and what a life well lived actually looks like. We build our days around this idea. Wake up early because every minute counts. Stay late because that's how you get ahead. Fill every gap in your schedule with something productive, something that moves the needle, something that earns. The message is clear. Your hours have a price tag. Sell them wisely. And most people believe this completely. They structure their entire existence around the principle that efficient conversion of time into currency is the goal. That if they could just optimize the exchange rate, squeeze more dollars out of each hour, they'd eventually reach some promised land of financial security. But somewhere along the way, a different thought starts forming for some. A quiet suspicion that refuses to go away, no matter how many productivity books get read or how many hours get logged. What if we've had this backwards the entire time? What if the relationship between time and money isn't what we've been told? What if, instead of time being money, the truth is something far more profound? Money is time. Not a clever reversal for the sake of it. An actual reframing that changes everything once you really sit with it. Think about what money actually represents when you strip away all the abstraction. Every dollar in an account didn't appear from nothing. It came from somewhere. Someone, at some point, exchanged a portion of their finite existence to create it. And for anyone who earned that money themselves, the equation becomes uncomfortably personal. That balance in the account, it's not just numbers. It's hours, days, weeks of life, compressed into a form that can be stored and exchanged. Money is congealed time, crystallized moments, a tangible representation of life already spent. If this idea resonates with you, if you've ever felt like something about the traditional hustle mindset just doesn't add up, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and like this video. We explore ideas like this regularly, and you'll find value in sticking around. Now, let's go deeper. Picture someone in their first real job after finishing school. Nothing special. An office position with decent pay and reasonable hours. The kind of role that millions of people settle into every year, grateful for the stability. For the first few months, it feels like a fair arrangement. Show up, do the work, collect the paycheck. Simple enough. The math seems balanced. But as the months stretch into years, something starts feeling off. Not dramatically wrong, just slightly askew in a way that's hard to initially articulate. It hits during an evening commute home. The train is delayed, packed with other tired faces, everyone staring at phones or out windows with that particular blankness that comes from routine exhaustion. A reflection in the dark glass reveals an expression that barely looks familiar. The calculation happens later that night. The commute takes about an hour and 15 minutes each way. Add the actual workday, the mandatory lunch break rarely enjoyed, the buffer time for getting ready, arriving a bit early to seem dedicated. By the time everything the job demands gets accounted for, roughly 11 hours of every weekday disappear, 55 hours a week, in exchange for a salary that covers rent, bills, a modest lifestyle, and a little left over for savings. But here's what nobody mentions during job interviews. Those aren't just work hours being sold, they're life hours. The same hours that might have been spent learning something new, building something independent, deepening relationships, exploring interests, simply existing without purpose beyond the experience itself. Every paycheck becomes a strange document once seen this way. Not a reward for productivity, a receipt for life already traded away. The uncomfortable math begins. If someone earns roughly $40 an hour after taxes, then every $120 spent represents 3 hours of existence gone forever. That expensive dinner out? Nearly an entire afternoon of life. That impulse purchase barely remembered a week later? Hours that will never return. The framing of time is money encourages hustling harder, optimizing the sale, maximizing the exchange rate. Get more money per hour. Simple enough. But what it never addresses is the fundamental question underneath. Should hours be sold at all? And if they must be, how much of a finite existence is anyone actually comfortable trading away? The first time someone consciously spends money to reclaim time, it feels almost transgressive, like breaking some unspoken rule about responsible adulting. Consider hiring someone to deep clean an apartment. Sounds trivial, but consider what that actually means. 4 hours every weekend spent scrubbing, organizing, maintaining. 4 hours of precious off time never actually wanted to be spent that way. Hiring help costs about $100, which, in hourly terms, represents maybe 2.5 hours of work, but it frees up 4 hours of weekend time valued far more than weekday office hours. The math becomes suddenly obvious, effectively buying 2 premium hours of life for the cost of 2.5 less valuable ones. An asymmetric exchange in favor of the buyer. This opens a door that didn't seem to exist before. Every expenditure starts getting viewed through this lens. Not, what does this cost in dollars, but what does this cost in hours of life? And crucially, what does this buy in hours returned? Some purchases, previously considered extravagant, begin making sense. Living closer to work, even if rent is higher, could save hundreds of commuting hours over a year. Paying for a meal delivery service during particularly demanding projects buys back hours otherwise spent grocery shopping and cooking while exhausted. Other purchases, previously made without thinking, start looking absurd. That subscription never used, the gadgets sitting in drawers, the stuff accumulated from some vague sense that having more was always better. All of it representing hours of life converted to objects that add nothing to the actual experience of living. Money, slowly realized, is not the end goal. It's a medium of exchange in a much more fundamental transaction. The real currency is time. The real question is always whether a particular exchange gives more or less of it. We live in a culture obsessed with scarcity. Not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough success to go around. But this fixation on financial scarcity blinds us to a more fundamental truth. Money is not actually the scarce resource. Think about it carefully. There is no fixed amount of money in the world. Economies grow. Wealth gets created. Currency gets printed. Someone starting a business tomorrow can generate wealth that didn't exist yesterday. The pool of money is not a static quantity being fought over. Any individual might have limited money at any given moment, but the existence of money itself is limitless. It can always be created, earned, borrowed, generated. Time cannot. Every single person on the planet receives exactly the same allocation. 24 hours per day, no exceptions. No bonus rounds for high performers. No penalty for those who waste it. Just 24 hours, refreshed daily, until the day the clock stops entirely. And unlike money, time cannot be saved for later. Nobody can bank today's hours for a future when they might be needed more. Every moment that passes is gone, spent or wasted, meaningful or meaningless. It vanishes regardless. This is the brutal democracy of time. The billionaire and the broke college student both wake up to the same 24 hours. What differs is how much control each has over what fills those hours. And there's another limited resource rarely discussed honestly: energy. Even within 24 daily hours, capacity isn't equal throughout. The version of someone at 7 in the morning, rested and fresh, can accomplish things the version at 11 at night cannot even contemplate. Mental energy depletes. Physical energy wanes. Creative energy comes in waves that cannot be forced. The hours of peak capacity are far fewer than the total hours in a day. So here is the truth that changes everything. Money is unlimited. Time is finite. Energy is even more constrained. The goal is not to accumulate money. The goal is to use money, that unlimited resource, to protect and maximize the limited ones. Once the understanding settles that time and energy are the truly scarce resources, thinking shifts about how to deploy them. Consider two approaches to earning a living. The first approach trades time directly for money. Work for an hour, get paid for an hour. When working stops, the money stops. Income is directly proportional to the hours physically shown up and performed. The second approach invests time and energy up front to create something that continues generating value after the initial investment. A business that runs without constant presence. An asset that appreciates over time. a skill that opens doors repeatedly. The first approach is linear. More hours equals more money, with hard limits on both. The second approach is leveraged. A fixed investment of time potentially generates returns that far exceed what those same hours could have earned if sold directly. A writer who spends 6 months creating a book is not just selling those months of effort. If the book resonates, it might generate income for decades. Those 6 months of invested time become multiplied across years of returns. An entrepreneur who spends 2 years building a system that eventually runs without daily oversight hasn't just worked 2 years. They've created something that continues producing value without proportional ongoing time investment. The question behind every use of time becomes not just what is the payment for this hour, but what is the long-term yield of investing this hour here versus somewhere else. There is a particular kind of stress that comes from having no control over time. The alarm that dictates when the day begins. The schedule that determines when to eat, when to pause, when leaving is permitted. The calendar filled with obligations placed there by others. The Sunday evening dread as the week looms ahead, already claimed before it even starts. This stress operates beneath conscious awareness for most people. It's so normalized that questioning rarely happens. Of course, someone else determines how most waking hours get spent. That's just how life works, but it's not how life has to work. Control over time is not about never working. It's not about lazy fantasies of endless vacation. It's about something more fundamental, the ability to decide how hours are spent. Some people who work extraordinarily hard have this control. They work intensely because they've chosen to, on projects that matter to them, on schedules they've designed. Their effort feels different because it emerges from agency rather than obligation. And money, properly understood, is one of the most powerful tools for acquiring this control. This might mean buying freedom from unpleasant tasks, hiring help for things that drain, to create space for things that energize. It might mean buying freedom from a bad location, moving somewhere that reduces commute time, improves quality of life, positions closer to what matters. It might mean buying freedom from worry itself, having enough of a buffer that the constant low-grade anxiety of financial precariousness finally releases its grip. Each of these represents money being exchanged for something more valuable than the goods or services it could alternatively purchase. Time, energy, peace, choice, control. Looking at money as stored time forces a confrontation with how spending actually happens. If a subscription costs $10 a month and the hourly earning is $20, that's 30 minutes of life per month, traded for access that may or may not get used. Across a year, that's 6 hours of finite existence. Was 6 hours of value received in return? If a car costs $500 more per month than a cheaper alternative, and the hourly earning after taxes is $30, roughly 17 hours monthly get traded for the upgrade. Is the nicer car worth 17 hours of life every single month? This is not about becoming miserly or denying pleasure. It's about clarity. When money gets recognized as stored time, sleepwalking through purchases stops. The question starts getting asked whether the exchange actually serves. Some things become obviously worthwhile. Spending money on experiences with loved ones, investing in health that extends total hours, purchasing tools that amplify what can be created. Other things reveal themselves as absurd trades, objects that sit unused, status symbols that impress no one who matters, recurring charges for services long forgotten. The discomfort of this clarity is the point. It forces intentionality. We inherit a definition of wealth that centers on accumulation. More money, more assets, more stuff. The wealthy are those who have the most of these things. But this definition collapses under examination. Someone with $10 million who works 80 hours a week, never sees their family, carries constant stress about markets and investments, and can't remember the last time genuine peace was felt. Are they wealthy? Someone with modest savings who works 30 hours a week on projects found meaningful, spends abundant time with people loved, sleeps well, wakes up without dread, and feels genuine control over daily existence. Are they poor? The numbers say one thing. The lived experience says another. True wealth is not a quantity in an account. It's a quality of relationship with time. Is there control over hours, or do they control? Can things that drain be refused, or is there entrapment by necessity? Do days reflect actual values, or some external agenda never consciously chosen? Money is time. Not a metaphor, not a clever saying, a literal truth about what those numbers and accounts actually represent. Every dollar held was earned through moments of finite human existence, and how those dollars get spent is how those moments get honored or squandered. The goal was never accumulation for its own sake. The goal was always control. Control over how remaining hours unfold. Control over what fills days. Money is simply one of the most effective tools for gaining that control. Stored time, waiting to be exchanged for more time, or squandered on things that leave less of what actually matters. The choice, now that it's seen clearly, is yours.